no guns, no bombs on the road to peace, no hungry mouths to feed. From a distance, we are instruments marching in the common land, playing songs of hope, playing songs of peace. They're the song of every man. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance.
Here we go, Paul. So with you, it's good to be with you once again from a distance during these times. So Monsignor, do you want to say hello?
Good evening, everyone. We're back at it again. Glad to be with you, and it might warm up this week, so be calm.
Yeah, that's great. Sounds good. I think we're all looking forward to that. Some parish news here, as always, first. So as we all know, next week's a big week in our country, in our nation, as people go out to vote in person. To pray for our country in different ways. In both parishes, we have different events. So at St. Ignatius in Annandale on Tuesday, that's of course election day, we will have adoration in the main church during the polling hours. So from 8 a.m. until 8 p.m. with benediction to close roughly around 8 p.m. So again, please feel free to stop by at any point in the main church at St. Ignatius in Annandale on election Tuesday, and say a prayer for our nation, say a prayer for those who are voting, and of course that God's will be done, and to be good election. So and just of course prayers for our nation in general. So that'll be happening in Annandale again next week on election Tuesday. At St. Timothy's here, we'll also be having adoration. It'll be a little different hours. It'll be from 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. We have the mass at 6:30 p.m. here on Tuesday nights at St. Timothy's. So adoration on election day at St. Timothy's will be at 9 a.m. until 6 p.m. in the main church. Of course, as always, there's adoration in the chapel, but we're going to move the adoration to the main church to accommodate hopefully more numbers who will want to come to pray for our country and those who are voting on election day on Tuesday. So want to give you a heads up in that way. Also, Sunday after the 8 o'clock a.m. Mass here at St. Timothy's, we will have a Eucharistic procession around the main church, as well as praying the rosary again for the same intentions, but also for unity and peace in a special way in our country. That'll be again after the 8 a.m. Mass here at St. Timothy's. Please consider joining us for a Eucharistic procession outside, as well as praying the rosary, followed by benediction in the main church. Again, praying for unity and peace in our nation on Sunday. So different events. Of course, we know how much, just in general, we all need prayer, and our country needs prayer during these times. So ways to help in that way during these days. So also want to give you a heads up that this weekend we'll be celebrating All Saints Day. That's the usual weekend masses because it happens to fall on Sunday. So the weekend masses will be All Saints Day. And that also means we'll have All Souls Day on Monday. We will have masses in both parishes at 8 a.m. for All Souls Day, for those who might be interested in attending a mass, celebrating a mass for All Souls Day, 8 a.m. on Monday morning at both St. Timothy's and St. Ignatius. Also, we'll have more information for you soon, but we're excited to have formed.org at St. Timothy's now. It's been at St. Ignatius for a number of years, but partially or largely or exclusively due to the arrangement now with St. Ignatius, we're blessed to be able to offer form.org at St. Timothy's as well. Again, we'll have more information for you. You may have heard about that from other parishes, but it's a way for all parishioners to watch different videos from renowned speakers, Catholic speakers, continue your education information at home, as well as for Bible studies, for faith formation, for youth group, for the school. We'll be able to offer those tools and those resources in that way here at St. Timothy's. Again, more information to come on how you could log in at home and these kind of things, perhaps watch some videos with your family and continuing to grow in the faith at home in that way. So I just want to give you a little heads up. We're excited to have that at St. Timothy's as well. Yeah, and as always, feel free to chime in with any questions, comments, thoughts throughout the evening. Anything you want to talk about, any questions, thoughts you might have. But we're blessed to have with us a visitor once again, a visitor that many of you, or basically all of you, will know, Deacon Ron Freeman, who served at both parishes in St. Ignatius and St. Timothy's, and has been a deacon, of course, for a number of years. We'll talk about that here shortly, as well as a chaplain to hospice patients. Looking forward to visiting with him and learning more about his story and just hearing his pastoral wisdom and insights that he's gained throughout the years. So with that, Deacon Ron, do you want to take a seat here? We'll trade places.
Okay. There we go.
So maybe Deacon, I know obviously I think most people who are watching this or will watch it know who you are, but if you want to just give a brief reminder of your background and how you got to where you are right now.
Hi, I'm Deacon Ron Freeman. I was ordained back in 1988, and I served as deacon at St. Timothy's and St. Ignatius both for all these years. And I'm originally from Dassel. I moved to Annandale and spent most of my life there. And recently sold my big place in the country and got a little place in the golf course in Clearwater. So we did the downsizing thing, and now I'm mostly retired. I help out whenever I can, and that seems to suit everybody right now. So,
And Deacon, you said 1988.
Yep.
And what were you, 14 when you were ordained? Or
well, actually, when in the process of discerning whether or not I wanted to go in a seminary, I wasn't old enough to be ordained, and so it was kind of an interesting time because I was too young. We had a lot of kids already. In fact, we had two of them when we were in a seminary, and my wife had to go to the seminary with me, so she has the same education, and through it all, she wound up being the DRE and at St. Timothy's, and then in St. Michael at the big church, and became the faith formation director, and even wound up teaching in the seminary for the seminarians. So we, the church got a twofer when they took me.
That's good. That, double your pleasure, double your fun, isn't it? The double income.
Yeah.
And then you look like you have that nice red coat. That you might have been one of those Cardinals this weekend that were now. You know? But in Pectoray, they used to say.
I'm a Cardinal because that was our school mascot when we were in Annandale. So.
But Deacon, what inspired you, or what moved you to become a deacon?
Well, I didn't grow up Catholic. I was baptized Episcopal and raised in the Lutheran Church, and I met this cute little Irish gal, and next thing I knew, I was Catholic and married to her. And
We gotta watch these Irish.
And yeah, she straightened me out real quick. And so, anyways, I started in the Catholic Church with no great reservations or anything, but I thought it was better to go to her church than no church, so I joined the Catholic Church. And but it's when I was in the church for a while, and I started wanting to learn more about the church and understand it better and understand some of the things that they do better. And the next thing I knew, I went on a tech weekend. That was a huge turning point in life for me, and I followed it up with getting involved with the Life in the Spirit seminars and moved deeper in my faith. And then actually Father McNulty sent my wife and I to a canon law session in the cities. And when I was in there, I ran into then Father Carlson, later on to be Bishop Carlson, and I went in and sat in a meeting with the deacons. And when they were done, he came over to me and asked me why I was there, and I said because there was no place to sit in the other room. And he said no. He said, I think God wanted you here, and he said, have you ever considered becoming a deacon? I said, no, I don't even know what it is, and because it was a relatively new program then. And anyways, he was right. Next thing I knew, I was discerning whether or not to go into the seminary and apply even. And it was a tough decision, I went on a hunting trip in the mountains and sat on top of the mountain for a week praying, and Carol was at home praying about the same thing. So I finally made a deal with God and said, okay, first step is you got to take away all the barriers. Carol's got to agree, and we have to be accepted the first time because I'm not going to do this again. And of course, that's what happened, and all the barriers fell, and we wound up going to the seminary together. In fact, we had 2 kids while we were in the seminary, and they had instant babysitters though, because I don't think those kids ever hit the floor, so it was kind of fun. But
By the way, did you get anything on that hunting trip besides a call from God?
that's it.
That was it. You didn't get the deer or whatever.
We were hunting elk. I saw 3 of them on the way in and before the season opened. I never saw one after the season opened. So
See that? Well, Lord was going to have you fishers of men. There you are.
yeah, it was quite the trip. So, but anyways, it was, and it started there and went to the Life in the Spirit, and from there, Life in the Spirit.
Tell me a little bit about that.
It's a very spiritual weekend, but the tech weekend was a very powerful weekend because, you know, you started off with some tough looks at yourself, and then you went into the, the first day is very difficult, and then we had confession, and it was with Father Opath, and I think that was probably the best confession I ever had because I was so young, and I didn't grow up Catholic, so I had a little background to deal with yet, and that got me started. The Life in the Spirit seminar taught me the importance of the amount of prayer and the depth of prayer that I had, and that was a powerful experience too, and how to pray and meditate on it, and so on. So it was a couple of very powerful events in my life that kind of led me in the right direction, and I knew something was going on within me. I was being called to do something. I just didn't know what it was. And it was at that canon law session with Father Carlson that he kind of, gave me a direction to point. And when I look back at it, there's so many people that had to guide me in the right direction to make it work, and they did. And like I said, the rest is history. And I was too young to be ordained when I started, but by the time I was in there, I was 35, so I was old enough when I was ordained.
That's great. And you said about the time for prayer, and that was, right at the beginning, you got that inspiration and saw the importance of it because of that seminar or the Life in the Spirit that you did. Yeah. It was like today at the Gospel when the Lord was calling the disciples. Well, major moments in the Lord's life himself, he went the whole night to pray for those men and to be with the Father. And it was an example for them that they were going to need to spend time with the Lord and with him to understand what the Father's will was for them. So there was with you. That Lord gets you, and then if we don't know how to pray, he shows us.
Yep.
And so that was great. That's wonderful.
And that was real important because I've taught for so many years with the kids, and in that time frame, I've had several young men and women who went on to the religious life, and several deacons and several priests now from the kids that I worked with, and
that's beautiful. See, the Lord, he gets you, and then he puts you to work, and look what happens. It's a great blessing for the church. The diaconate is all about service.
Yep.
And you're called to serve, and then at the altar, and then corporal works of mercy, and that sounds like it's been a great part of your life, the corporal works of mercy.
And the prayer life that I learned in the seminary, basically, and from the Life in the Spirit seminar, was a big guiding force when I became a hospice chaplain.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for 16 years, and that was...
Tell us a little more about your experience in hospice.
Well, when I was in the seminary, I wanted to work with kids.
Mm-hmm.
I wound up working in hospice mostly with people who were older than me,
mm-hmm.
and being with them on their journey as they were preparing to die.
Yeah.
and helping family, helping the individuals. And it was nice to have the depth of prayer experience before that, so that you could pray with people and be with them in those moments.
And that's so important. And everybody has their own experience. But I remember when I first had experience in the hospital, you're a little at a loss. Like, well, how do I do or what? And a lot of it's just being present to the people, making them feel that the Lord is with them, and then sharing prayer with them when they can pray, and then praying with them when they can't.
Right.
It's so much. It gives them hope and strength, and they don't feel like they're just left alone.
And a lot of my experiences in hospice were with people with dementia, and which was helpful because both my parents had dementia, and had to deal with that way. But I learned one of the biggest tricks for getting a person with dementia back to focus was to sit down and say the Lord's Prayer with them.
Sure.
And then instantly they would be back to focus for a while. And the nurses were amazed at how I could get the people back then. Well, I said, it's what they learned when they were young,
Yeah.
and they can still remember that.
That's right. And if you got a few hymns out there, the oldies,
Yeah, we did that too.
yeah, well, they'll join right in for that, you know.
Yeah. And that's a powerful tool for.
Yeah, because it touches their memory of how the Lord touched them.
Yeah.
And there's even when they can't describe it, the feeling is there, you know.
Yes, and that's important too, because the family likes it when they see you come in and say a prayer and they come to focus, and they feel better when mom or dad is
Sure.
back even for a minute.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of work with that. I did a lot of teaching in that area too for nursing homes. And
What did you find, if there was any, the more difficult side of that?
I think one of the I guess I'd say one of the worst deaths I ever had to deal with was a lady who had end stage rheumatoid arthritis,
Okay.
and you couldn't touch her. If the staff even just touched her shoulder, it doesn't matter where you touch her, she'd just scream. And of course they had to change us. She was very elderly and very frail, and they had to change her diapers, and she just shrieked like you were cutting her leg off. It was terrible. And I did most of my praying then to the Lord, take her home quick because she's suffering just terribly. And she had her faculties, and that's almost the worst thing. So
Yeah, well, she'll go right to heaven after all that suffering.
I hope so. She sure.
And your prayers with her.
Yeah. So, but those are the tough ones. I mean, I had a baby that was born without the brain that lived for several days, and that was a tough one too.
Yeah. But you know, thank God, it's a blessing that you're there with people at their most difficult time, families and so on, you know, and they never forget it.
No, I've had people call me several years after their spouse had died and asked me if I'd come over and pray with them, and I said sure. So,
Some of the more exciting things, if you will, in your life as a deacon, what would you think of some of the things that surprised you but gave you great joy?
I the first big surprise came when I was ordained. That was a feeling that I never, in my wildest dreams, expected. And when you got thousands of people all chanting the Holy Spirit, and you're laying on the floor, that's a very powerful experience in itself.
Well, I think Father and I could both relate to that.
Yeah.
You know, you know that the power of the Spirit is there, and you feel it.
And some of my experiences are kind of unique in the seminary because two of us didn't grow up Catholic, and one, he was Southern Baptist, and I grew up mostly Lutheran, and so it was a kind of an interesting walk through the seminary. We started off with 7 and wound up with 4, and 2 of them died, and one of them withdrew for a year to get married. So it was kind of an interesting time in life, and we became very close. And
an ecumenical group, we'd say.
Yep.
Yeah, that was good.
And it was a good class. So.
you could help each other then, because
Yeah.
coming at it from different experiences.
Well, it was nice too because some of the stuff that we had for classes wasn't my strength, and but Carol was real good at it.
Mhm.
So we could explain each other's weaknesses and on the drive back and forth from home to down the seminary. So it was kind of a unique scenario for that, and that was good.
That's great. Father, now you've been with the deacon here since you came here.
Yeah.
So you want to tell me some of the experiences you had with this grand deacon?
Definitely miss him. I can say that much for sure. I definitely miss having him here, and both personally, just his joyful presence and just wonderful, good presence, and obviously his help and preaching as well being assumed. But no, just a huge blessing for having Deacon Ron personally, as well as obviously just having a deacon in the parish is a great service, and they do so many wonderful things. So very much miss him and miss his presence here, acting in the parish, but blessed that he's able to have a retirement now and these kind of things. So, but no, it was a great, obviously, blessing for me personally. I know, obviously, for the parishioners, very much being assumed.
Now you've seen a lot of growth and a lot of, like, how would you say, excitement in the parishes here that you've served. And tell me a few joyful moments that you had in that.
I think some of the most joyful moments for me are going through classes with the kids and seeing them grow up and grow in their faith. And I you know, for some, for me, it was a great moment when they were just confirmed. And I always love to hold the oils for Father and or the bishop and when they blessed them. And I said, you could look in their eyes and see Christ in them.
Yeah.
And it was a great experience with them. Then when they went on and they became, you know, deacons and they became priests and everything, that was even a bigger thrill for me. It was.
Yeah. I would imagine, yeah, it's kind of, God bless you, to be with them on that journey right to the altar.
And I'm still very attached to all those kids, so I love to see them. When I can, I spend time with them, and we try to get together even now, and when they're home from college or whatever.
Now each age has a different approach to things. You and I aren't getting any younger, but let's put it this way: what do you see, in your having had your experience in today, here and now? What do we need to do to keep the young people excited about their faith? What would you suggest?
Well, I think, for me personally, I think it's a matter of teaching them to have a closer relationship with Christ and in a prayer-like presence almost constantly in life, and teaching them not to be afraid to pray for things. And I think that in itself is the key, because you're always going to go through hard times. That's just part of life. And things like this COVID virus, it's very interesting. You know, the world withdraws from being in groups and everything, and yet, you know, I see, you know, I come to the parking lot mass and it's full.
That's right.
And it's a wonderful thing that we can do that even, and I don't say that I envy Father's position. He's got to run up from car to car to car all the way across the parking lot, but
Well,
I'm
on
glad
that
he's
altar,
doing it.
he feels like Pope John Paul II up
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean? All they need is John Paul II. We love you. He'll have a chance soon.
There you go. It'd probably be up there blessing everybody.
That's right. That's right. But it is, as you say, it's been a wonderful experience, and many people, as challenged that this might be, somehow it brings them closer to the Lord too, because as you say, a need for prayer. There's a certain loneliness and fear in all of us when you're confronted at times like this, but it also tells us what our faith can do for us in moments like this if we just stay strong, you know?
I think that the parishes in this area between Annandale and Maple Lake, we've been blessed with a lot of really good priests, and you know, I've always said that it's the guiding force in life. If you get a bad priest or even bad pastor or anything in a place, it's hard on it. But we've been blessed with a series of young, really good priests here. So
I can attest to that. Any number of them in the whole area here, I think they were all students of mine at some point. You know, but it's exciting to see that, because you see how the Lord formed them and prepared them to do the many things that they're doing and doing very well, and with their certain excitement about it, which is what I think people can identify with and they love, because if you're excited about serving the Lord in that way, then the people themselves feel more excited,
yes.
and I think that's wonderful. Father, you want to say a word or two, because you're getting a little older now, Father. You better chime in here for a bit. You know, how many years you're 12 years a priest, are you?
12 years ordained, yes. Yep.
Hard to believe.
Yeah, that's been wonderful. So been at St. Timothy's for 8.5 of those years. So and yeah, it's been great. It's been blessed. But yeah, Deacon, I'm not sure if you want to share more either teaching the kids. That's always been a huge part of your diaconate and your love and your joy. It's very clear and wonderful blessing for them. And other highlights of being a deacon, or just yeah, maybe too, just how people can live out their faith during these times. Any thoughts you might have?
Well, it's always interesting because, like I said, when I'm up at my new place up there, none of those people know me as a deacon, so it's always kind of interesting. And but they all know that I love to help people, and I helped my neighbor. We had an accident, and he broke his back, and I spent a lot of time helping him, and it amazed me that all the people noticed that even. And I thought, well, that's what you do. You know, I didn't think it was anything special at all, but it gives you, it makes you feel good to know people actually do realize that what you're doing is. And I think what I appreciated, like even from the kids, was the thank yous that I got this past class that graduated from high school. And I had some cards that I will treasure for many years. So it was very nice to hear what they thought, and how much they appreciated the programs that they went through, and how they grew in their faith going through the church and through the different classes.
And you, when you're with them, you're not even realizing how much you're affecting their lives. You're doing what God calls you to do, but there's a great excitement about it once you these experiences, that they come back years later and they just remind you of what you said, and you kind of say, did I say that, or whatever. But it really is that you can see that the Lord works through us, and many good things happen if we just open our hearts to Him, you know.
Well, when I was in high school, I wouldn't go out for speech or debate because I couldn't stand up in front of people and talk. I said,
well, I was shy as all of that. Father Meyer doesn't believe it, but it's something that, you know, the Lord helps you come out of yourself.
yeah, he did. Now he can't get me to be quiet. So
Yeah, well, Father Meyer tells me about 3 times a day to shut up.
Just reading a quick comment here. So Shar Druckenham says, we miss you too, Deacon Ron, so passing on her comment there. So. But then I know you worked obviously with hospice, as you mentioned earlier too, and this is a big question, but any insights, I guess, that you learned from working with those who are drawing so close to death, and I guess their reflections or their what they were going through, and maybe what they share with you, or just your own observations, spend so much time with those who are facing the reality of death, as many of us try to obviously keep out of our sight or out of our mind. I don't know, any thoughts, I guess, that you might have from all your time, and any wisdom that I have to share from that time?
Well, one of the things that it happens for people like myself, and not just me, but a lot of people at the end of their lives oftentimes have great visions, and they'll see things in heaven, or they'll see many times they'll see one of their loved ones coming to get them, or they'll see Christ coming to get them, and but all of them talk about how beautiful heaven is. And I had dozens of people that I was with in the last hours of their life, and all of them had this um, almost a no fear attitude, because they understood it was going to be good where they were going, and how beautiful heaven really was. And those experiences started adding up over the years. And when I started talking about some of them, some of the nurses that I worked with wanted me to write a book, and I said, I'm not a writer. I said, I can't write a book. And they said, your stories are so good, and people should hear them. And I said, well, a lot of them are very personal too, and difficult to share. And some of them I don't know that people would want them shared, knowing who they really were. But I said it is one of those things that I will cherish forever. And I had one real interesting one time when Father McLaughlin was here. I had a lady who was in her 90s, who was very close to dying. And I came in and asked if I could say a prayer with her, and she said, yeah, she'd really like that. So when I made the sign of the cross and said, in the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, she went right into confession. Now, I'm not a priest. I don't do confessions. And she went right in and told me things that I didn't want to know. And I didn't even know what to do when it was over. I mean, it was kind of funny, but I was in a bad spot. So I went to Father McLaughlin and told him what had happened. And he looked at me and he said, as only McLaughlin could do, he says, did you give her absolution? I said, no. He said, good. He said, because it's probably the best confession she ever had. He says, don't worry about it. God will take care of it. And it was a great relief to me knowing that was going on that way. And I had another one where I gave a person communion and they died. And they never consumed it, and it was in their mouth. And I sat there for a minute, and I didn't know what to do, and finally his eye twitched a little bit and his eyes came open. He said, am I still here? I said, not for long. You want to chew that whole stuff real quick? And he had his communion, and I called his wife in, and we said a prayer, and he was gone. So you can't time it out any better than that. So it was really good. So those experiences stick out in your mind for a lot of years to come. So
I remember Father Meyer, when I first came up here and from the seminary and helping out, and Sister Paul Therese, she's on the faculty there for forever. I used to joke with her. I told her she had the ride on the Noah's Ark back in the day, but she used to shake her fist. But we got to be close, and I was up here. I think it was during Holy Week, and we got a call. She was in the hospital, and she had health problems at this point with her heart and so on. Well, that she was taking a turn for the worse, so she wanted to be anointed. So Father and I drove down, and when we got there, down she was sitting up, and there were a couple of people there, Sister Katharina, I think, and or if not, and a couple of the people from the seminary were there at the time. We came in and anointed her, and we talked and had a few laughs and all this kind of thing. And then she asked for a blessing. We blessed her besides anointing her and said our farewell. And she said, no, she said, go back, she said, and tell the boys I love them. And I mean, that was one of the most powerful things. I mean, I almost choked up, but she her whole life was given there all of these years, but she wanted them to know that before she went to the Lord. And she went to the Lord right after that.
Yeah, you mentioned that story, Deacon, about the communion. I mean, the viaticum, of course, the Latin word for that just means food for the journey, and that's literally what happened right there. That's pretty amazing, just how the Lord, we give the Eucharist to those who are dying when we can, when they're able to consume, of course, and it's called the viaticum, and one part of the last rites, and again, it literally means food for the journey. Of course, the idea of being journeying to the next life towards heaven. We pray, and in that case, it almost literally was that
Yeah.
food for the journey.
It was kind of interesting because I didn't know, they never teach you what to do with those moments.
Yeah, yeah.
So
No,
you gotta wing it.
yeah, but you know, the Lord gives you the grace, the words you want to say, and it becomes almost instinct after a while, you know. And thanks be to God, because otherwise you just stand there like a toy soldier. But no, God gets you into action.
Yeah, I had a lot of great memories from working hospice for 16 years. It was
Can
a long
imagine.
time. I started out in hospice working 5 hours a week, and I ended up trying to keep it under 50. And I had a triple workload for the last 2 years that I worked.
Mhm.
And
Well, you know, one of the greatest saints of our day, Mother Teresa, so much of her life in the beginning, when she would bring the people in to just give them an opportunity to die with dignity and close to the Lord, and how many she was with when they went to the Lord, holding them, praying with them, and you know, it's amazing, and I think that had a way of just adding a certain greatness but tenderness to her life as a sister, that she could be with little children, and she brought them in when they were just left on their own, and loved them, and then people who on the other end of the spectrum who are dying, she prepares them to go to Jesus, you know. So it's a great gift from God that He allows us to be part of that.
yeah, and I think that she was truly a great saint, and um, what she did was teach all of us a lot
Oh yeah.
of good things.
And now you're retired, happily enjoying retirement.
Well,
What do you-
it'd be better when I go back and do a few things again.
Sure.
Well, you'll be called up from the bench pretty soon. I
There you go.
think.
Yeah. That'd be great. So, probably gonna wrap up here in a few minutes, but any final thoughts or things?
Yeah, when we were talking about that, I thought of these things of the two great saints of our time, uh, John Paul II, and we saw him at the beginning of his pontificate, and he was only 58 or so when he became over. He was that long time as our Holy Father. Then he grew up with him, if you will, and then he entered the seminary and into the religious life because of him, because they saw determination and strength. Because and he told us right at the beginning, be not afraid, don't be afraid. And and Mother Teresa, they came at the same time. Then God raises up people that we need at the same time, and her little prayer each time was, be only all for Jesus. So there's the Pope telling us not to be afraid, and she's telling us what to do. And you know, the thing that most of them, the both of them had close to their hearts was the love, not only for the Lord Jesus, but the love for the gift of life that He gave us, and how we could share in His life. And they also are a great example to us of how we have to do whatever we can to protect human life from its beginning, uh, its conception, until natural death. And you would, and in our ministry, we've been able to help them in both, and they're two grand examples for us. So now we're going into prepare our leaders, and that's what we prayed for in these leaders who are going to lead our country. That the many things that they can do, work for peace, work for justice, but the sacredness of human life, it's all there. We have to protect it, especially the unborn. And we should remember that. We must remember that when we're picking the leaders that are good for our country. So we have to pray. Father has organized in the parishes here. We're praying hard now that we will get those leaders who can help lead us into a greater time when there'll be peace and harmony. And that all starts with our love and respect for life. The Lord's life that He shares with us, and the life that He gives us. And we have to respect that and love that in others. So I think that could be part of our prayer. And there's, the other day I shared with some people in Parish Media when I was preaching about the Holy Father John Paul II, one of his last trips in the United States, one of the longer ones. He talked to America, and he had a prayer for us all, and he gave a farewell, and it was so powerful, and it all was focused just on that. And one of his favorite hymns, I think, from just going around the country and hearing to him was "America the Beautiful." So I think, Father, if we could find that, we could use it. Maybe that could be our quiet prayer before we finish here.
Sure.
You've heard of that song
Yeah,
before.
hold on.
Jesus Christ, forever will bring for purple mountain majesty of the fruited plain, America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea.
God bless America.
God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea